Yield now, and you may remain as Lord of the Iron Islands. Yield now, and your sons will live to rule after you. I have 8,000 men outside your walls.
What is outside my walls is of no concern to me. Those walls are strong and thick.
But not so high as to keep out dragons. Dragons fly.
I built in stone. Stone does not burn.
When the sun sets, your line shall end.
The largest castle ever built in Westeros does not stand. It sags. 5 towers, twisted and slumped, their stone bent like wax left too close to a candle. The ground around them is blasted to dust 3 centuries later and still refuses to grow grass. Walk close enough and you can run your hand along walls that ran like syrup. This is Harrenhal today, and every history book will tell you a dragon did this. That is the lie. That's the version everyone remembers, but it's not the part that won the war. A dragon burned the castle, yes. But a dragon did not win the war. I'm here to help you see this epic event in a different light. Aegon the Conqueror landed in Westeros with a few thousand men against a continent that could field hundreds of thousands. 3 dragons versus 7 kingdoms. But could it have worked if Aegon wasn't there? By the end of this, you'll see it too. Strap on and hang in. This is the Black Dread. Subscribe if you know what's good for you. Start with the timing, because the gods, if they exist in this story, have a cruel sense of humor. Harren the Black spent 40 years building Harrenhal. 40 years. 3 generations of whores, thousands of slaves dead in the quarries, weirwoods 3,000 years old cut down for rafters and beams, the riverlands beggared, the Iron Islands drained, mortar, some say, mixed with human blood. It was finished on the day Aegon Targaryen first set foot on Westeros. The same day, Harren took up residence in his finished masterpiece, and at almost the same hour, 3 dragons lifted from a ship at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush. Harren built a castle to defy dragons, and he finished it on the day dragons arrived. Poetic justice? You need to understand what Harrenhal was supposed to be. 5 towers, the shortest of them taller than the tallest spire in Winterfell. Walls so thick that the maesters wrote 1,000,000 men could march on Harrenhal, and 1,000,000 men would die trying. Stables for 1,000 horses. A godswood that swallowed 20 acres. Kitchens larger than the Great Hall of Winterfell. It was not a castle. It was a statement to a dragon lord. Harren did not build Harrenhal to hold the Riverlands. He built it to be the answer to every question, every army, every weapon the world might invent, including dragons. He told his men that very thing. Stone does not burn. And he was right about stone. But he did not know the heat that was coming his way. By the time Aegon arrived, the Riverlords had already turned. Edmund Tully of Riverrun raised his banners against the Ironborn. Houses, Blackwood, Mallister, Bracken, Vance, Piper, and Strong all abandoned Harren. These were the same lords Harren had broken down to build this very castle, and they left his side at the very sight of the dragons and took up arms against him. Harren retreated behind his walls and waited for the siege, but siege never came. Aegon rode to the gates under a peace banner. The conversation that followed is canon.
Yield now, and you may remain as Lord of the Iron Islands. Yield now, and your sons will live to rule after you. I have 8,000 men outside your walls.
What is outside my walls is of no concern to me. Those walls are strong and thick.
But not so high as to keep out dragons. Dragons fly.
I built in stone. Stone does not burn.
And Aegon Targaryen, outnumbered, outmanned, standing alone before the largest fortress in the world, said,
"When the sun sets, your line shall end."
And for once, that wasn't a threat. Then he turned, and he waited for evenfall. Because Aegon did not choose the largest army. He did not choose the richest kingdom. He chose the one place in Westeros that was supposed to be impossible to break. This was the night Aegon the Conqueror got his name. Inside Harrenhal, Harren rallied his men. He promised gold. He promised the daughters of the River Lords to any Ironborn who could put a spear through Balerion's heart. Outside, the rivermen stood in silent rings around the castle and watched the sky. Then the sun touched the god's eye, and Balerion rose. The Black Dread climbed until he disappeared into the dark, until he was nothing but a black shape against blacker stars. And then he fell. The accounts agree on what happened next, and the accounts almost don't believe themselves. The towers did not collapse. They melted. Stone glowed. Iron gates ran. The 5 great towers of Harrenhal, built to outlast empires, sagged at their tops, then their middles, then dripped. Rivermen watching from the lake's edge would say, for the rest of their lives, that the castle ran like candles. Anything that could burn, burned. Anything that could not burn, melted. Harren and his sons fled to the largest tower, the one they thought was strongest, and barred the doors. That tower has a name now. It didn't before. It would later be called King's Pyre. He wasn't burned. He was cooked inside the walls he trusted. So you might think the lesson here is simple. Aegon had dragons. Harren did not. Dragons beat stone. End of story. That's not the lesson. Because Aegon could have flown Balerion to King's Landing first, to Casterly Rock, to Winterfell, to Storm's End. He chose Harrenhal. Harrenhal was never the target. The belief in it was. Harren had spent 40 years convincing the world his walls could not be broken. That belief was Aegon's most dangerous enemy. As long as Westeros believed something could resist dragons, every king still had a reason to fight. So Aegon did not just kill a king, he killed an idea. He took the strongest castle in the world, finished that very morning, and turned it into a melted ruin in a single night. Then he made certain every kingdom heard it, heard the towers ran like candles, heard the iron gates poured like wine, heard Harren screaming inside King's Pyre. The Riverlands did not fall in battle. They collapsed in certainty, because every lord watching Harrenhal burn understood the same thing at the same time. If Harrenhal failed, nothing will hold. Not because of what Balerion could do, because of what Balerion had already done. And this is the part most people miss. It wasn't that dragons were unstoppable. It's that Aegon made sure no one wanted to test it again. The melted swords of Harren's Ironborn were dragged from the ash and carried south. They were folded, in time, into a chair in a throne room. Every king who has ever sat the Iron Throne sits on the proof that Harrenhal failed, and the castle still stands, half melted, half haunted, cursed, the small folk say. Every house that has tried to hold it has died out. Hor, Caherys, Towers, Harroway, Strong, Lothston. 500 years of lords swallowed by the same blackened stone. Aegon could have torn it down. He didn't. He left it standing, sagging, visible, a ruin you can see from a day's ride away. I'm your maester at the Black Dread. The bones remember. Sponsored by theblackdread.com. You can use the site for free, but for $1.99 a month, you get exclusive shorts and member perks, less than a gas station snack. Jump in at theblackdread.com.